November 13th, Brian, Luoma.
It's not what life gives you, it's what you do with the life you've been given that counts. Like a million other days before, Brian Luoma strolled into his office. But on this day, Brian found himself wondering how much longer he would be able to walk at all. His muscles were weakening. He felt it. He had even adapted his house when he had built it as if it would need to be wheelchair accessible one day. He knew it was coming, but when? For now, he focused on the business he'd started in 1989 after quitting his job at Montgomery Ward's, the last job he had ever worked for someone else. After being his own boss for 8 years, his business proved him a success. It didn't matter what kind of physical ailments he had. It didn't affect his smarts, his entrepreneurial spirit, or his relationship with Christ. Brian could accomplish anything as long as he trusted Christ to lead him. Without that, life had very little meaning. Brian had been born with muscular dystrophy. Diagnosed when he was in the 4th grade, he never noticed any real physical symptoms until he was about 18 years old. But now, as an adult and owning his own business, he could feel his muscles getting weaker. Sometimes his footing was unstable, and the reality that he could fall and seriously hurt himself was a great concern. Brian was filled with anxiety of what this disease would do to him. One day in 2001, the very thing he had dreaded got real, and in a hurry. In his office, he fell. It didn't injure him too much, but everything changed after that. He could no longer walk. The strength to do so was gone. After that day, Brian became forever connected to his new scooter. But the scooter gave him a sense of relief because he had no more fear of falling. Although it was a very hard time in Brian's life, he was able to find strength from his faith in Jesus. Brian could have given up on his business, but he didn't. He didn't give in to despair. He kept talking to Christ, kept listening to him, and he kept trusting him. And Brian kept working hard to grow his business. Even when things didn't go the way he wanted, Jesus was in charge and looked after Brian's best interests. His disability made him stronger, not physically, but mentally and spiritually. He started having pool therapy, and it was a great help to him. And then he thought, maybe I can have my own therapy pool in my house someday. And if I do, I want to be baptized in it. See, being baptized anywhere else would be difficult for him. He would have to be lifted in and out, and the thought of getting hurt was always on his mind. Plus, he was self-conscious about it. Who wouldn't be? But this didn't stop him from wanting to be baptized. So his own pool in his house became his new goal, and he talked with God about it. Brian continued working hard and grew his business into even more of a success. It took about 6 years, but Brian finally met his goal. The indoor pool was built, and Brian regularly enjoyed the fruits of his labor, and eventually Brian was baptized in it. There's always something we can be thankful for, Brian says, even during tough times.
SaferNet is a VPN designed for families. Get daily updates, block sites, and even disable apps. Earn crypto for just staying connected to your cybersecurity. Keep your family safe online. Choose SaferNet.
1 Thessalonians 5:16-18 says, "Rejoice always, pray without ceasing, give thanks in all circumstances, for this is the will of God in Christ Jesus for you." What has life dealt you, positive or negative? How can you adjust your attitude to make the most of it? It's not what life gives you, it's what you do with the life you've been given that counts.
Today we're coming to you from Horn Peak in West Cliff, Colorado. And we just finished listening to the story of Brian Luoma.
So when I hear the story, I'm reminded of a few people, but the one mainly I'm reminded of is Denzel Washington. And there was a 365 story on him a little while ago. But his saying was, it's not how much you have, but it's what you do with how much you have. And this reminds me of this guy because he didn't have all the best cards. He wasn't dealt the best cards, but instead of feeling sorry for himself and getting down on himself and not doing anything in the world, he used his other gifts that God gave him, like his smarts, and he ended up creating a company that did very well, and he reaped the benefits of his smarts.
There are other guys that I've heard about. One through YouTube. His name is Zion, and he is a guy that has no legs, black guy, and he was an orphan, abandoned orphan who had a drug addict mom who abandoned him, and he was taken in by a household that loved him and taught him who he was, and God created him to do big things, and he ended up in the Olympics in wrestling. And another guy that I can't think of had no arms, no legs, and he's an inspirational speaker now, and doing great things, running businesses and everything. These are just some examples, guys, that we need to take a hold of and learn from. That God has a plan for each and every one of us. Another guy I can think of, David Goggins, had a special blood disorder. And he also was 300 pounds before he decided to make a change in his life, and he went through the Navy SEALs 3 times and finally passed. But know that God created each and every one of us to do good things, and he has a plan for each and every one of us, no matter what ailment you have. So my challenge is to you is to find out by reaching out, clinging on to God, and finding out what he has as far as a will for you. Thank you.